Okay, remember that they're sabotaging me because they know that I'm right, and it's obvious that I'm right, and they're changing my voice. I'm not gay. So look at the screen to see the definition of life intelligence as refined by me to a certain point that helps you see what it is. I mean, I could go on and on about the nuances, but you should understand more or less what it is. Life intelligence is the ability to understand oneself and others and the environment to make wise decisions. Wise life decisions. I remember I used to quote a martial art teacher named Master Hyo Cho. He was like a 6th degree, 7th degree, 8th degree black belt or something like that. And he used to say, or he wrote in his book Master Kick, that you first must try to understand yourself. Then you must master yourself. Then you must try to understand others. Just one of many examples how martial arts are life paths. Not all martial arts agree on things. Not all martial art teachers agree on things. And so you have this clash of people who took the time to look at life in a comprehensive manner, unless they're crazy and they're living a fantasy or something, and to try to understand people, to try to understand themselves, to try to understand the environment, and then to try to make wise decisions. So if you do what the governing class doesn't want you to do, and you really try to understand yourself, instead of reinventing yourself as their slave, especially if you pretend that you're empowered, especially if you're confident, right? Confident. If you really try to understand yourself, one thing that is helpful if you have trouble understanding yourself is to compare yourself to others. A lot of people say that you shouldn't do that, but you should do that. That's part of how you understand yourself. Who am I in the bigger scheme of things, right? You ever heard of that? Who am I and what is my part in the greater scheme of things? So print out a bunch of pictures of different types of people, put them on your wall or put them on some kind of cardboard box or something like they use for science fairs, and look at them and put your picture by them and say, well, who are you like, right? Are you like the jocks, the emos, the soldiers, the goths, gangsters, thugs, mobsters, politicians, lawyers, prostitutes, strippers, businessmen, priests, and so on and so forth. Try to understand yourself and how you compare with others. If someone is to try to be the best martial artist on the planet, for example, that is a mandatory thing that they must do. To be the man, it is mandatory to compare yourself to other men. Now, vir and virtue means man, so you must not sabotage them where you failed already. You failed yourself, you failed others, you failed the environment, but first and foremost, you failed God. You failed the essence of virtue, the essence of nature, the essence of being virtuous, right? Vir and virtue means man. The essence of being a man if you're male, and the essence of being a woman if you're female, right? The word man is in the word woman, not because they're supposed to be what they're not supposed to be, which is gender neutral, but because they're supposed to be virtuous. If they're not, they weren't raised right, and they're not really a woman. So the wise person looks at the situation and sees that it's stupid to reproduce, and they're ready to die on the drop of a hat for what is precisely right. In other words, they live their life as a moral martyr. They look at an evil world where everyone's trying to get them to conform to the agenda of the evil governing class, and they say to themselves, I'm willing to die for what's right rather than to conform and prolong my life, for example, for what's wrong. If someone doesn't come to that conclusion immediately, they don't have enough life intelligence to be a valid human being, right? Because a human has their humanity intact, and they do what is humane. And that first and foremost means asking themselves, is life worth living? Okay? Whether or not somebody kills themselves or fights to the death has to do with certain situations. Say, for example, you have one bullet left, and you're surrounded by a bunch of people rushing in who intend to beat you to death and kill you. Some people might come to the conclusion that they should use the bullet on them and accept the beating. And some people might come to the conclusion that they should shoot themselves. In a sense, at least, both answers are a correct answer. But under all circumstances, one should live their life as a moral martyr, ready to die on the drop of a hat for what's right. And again, if they do not come to that conclusion, they don't have a lot of life intelligence. They're not fit to be a parent, to be a role model, a mentor, a leader, you name it. And the society that lets them be those things is a rather unfortunate society. The society that encourages them to be those things is really a failed society. If you disagree, please put in the comments. I urge you to be very vocal if you disagree. It goes for the government, as you're persecuting me. You people in the government, you people giving the orders, if you really disagree, put your counter-argument in the comments. There is no viable counter-argument. There's just the counter-arguments of the inhuman. Those who lack humanity, those who don't have their humanity intact to the point where they're human. Thus, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, because I'm the top martial artist ever possible, due to tech, breeding, cheating, and generational ill-gotten gains ruling out people in the future. And in order for one to really have their humanity intact, they can't cheat me out of my right to lead. Wrong is wrong, whether or not you know what you're doing is wrong. And on a planet where you have a certain spectrum of people, right, understanding yourself and others, it's safe to say that someone with a 4th grade level of intelligence and better is aware that the ideal man is going to be someone who is going to be black. That's where we are in the world, and after I'm gone, that's it. Maybe long ago there was a chance for the other races to surpass, but that's over with. And I'm not saying this because I'm a racial supremacist. I'm not. I'm not a racial supremacist. I'm a moral supremacist. I'm saying this to help you understand who's who. If you have a counter-argument for that, please put in the comments. But when we look at Mandela, Martin Luther King, when we look at the history of the races and the different groups of people, we unavoidably come to the conclusion that you pick figs from the fig tree. You look for the ideal among the tree that has among its fruit, it has good and bad fruit, mind you, which seems to confound the Bible argument that no good tree bears bad fruit, because there's lots of black people who are bad people. The vast majority of people on this planet right now, of any race, are bad. In fact, I'm the only person who's really good, because everyone else is cheating me out of my right to lead. Whether or not you know eating kids is wrong in 2026, it's wrong. So if you're too retarded to come to the conclusion that that's wrong, you're still wrong. You're just less wrong than this person who is smart enough to know better. Wrong is wrong. And the world is cheating me out of my right to lead. So if they're a martyr for what they think is right, as opposed to a moral martyr, which is a martyr for what is actually right. Now, when you look at this situation and you ask yourself, what would God expect you to do? That's what you get. I also consider that someone might have a pretty good heart and they don't know that I'm here. So the next best thing is the next best thing. It doesn't get them into heaven, but it mitigates how much eternal punishment they will suffer for their failure and their forefathers and foremothers' failure. Your mother carries you in her womb for months. Your father impregnated her, and then their parents and their parents and their parents and their parents. So your fate is connected to a certain degree where it is, right? For example, the fate of Abel wasn't the same as the fate of Cain, but it was connected. Abel was killed by Cain because Cain was his brother, because his mother brought forth both of them, if you take the story as literal. Now, I've went way over time, so I'm going to leave it there. If you have any questions, put in the comments. Okay? The one who doesn't know will be beaten with few blows. The one who knows better, like the people targeting me and the people giving them their orders, will be beaten with many blows. And since that which you do will affect your offspring, their offspring will also be beaten with many blows. What they're doing is very stupid.